just take it with you if you move or
Yeah.
If it gets too far away,
You can't hear it.
Yeah, and I'm trying not to be a mic Nazi. You know what I mean? So it's like if I'm like kind of like doing
Yeah.
this, like
Yeah.
the mic's not.
A mic Nazi.
We
That's
wanna
pretty
hear
good.
everything.
I don't know if that was like the right choice of words to use. I'm sorry.
That's definitely Sunday.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Smell it.
Did you want to take a little?
That's the Sunday. That's delicious.
Smells really good.
It's got a really good taste to it.
Yeah, Derek grows in live soil over there, cranberry.
Nice work, Derek.
The Power Ranger.
So Megan, where are you from?
Originally from Northbridge, just south of Worcester, Blackstone
Okay.
Valley. Now I live in Amherst,
Okay.
and my lab is in Westfield.
Okay. I used to work up in Shrewsbury.
Oh yeah.
It's a hike.
From here.
Yeah. Every day for about a year.
Till Rick got fired.
Not at 100, it ain't, Rick.
No, I only got fired once in my career.
Only once?
Yeah, because of a stolen car. Like I had something to do with it.
Oh man.
Probably could have handled it a little bit
You know
better.
these
but
car dealers.
you can only be called a POS so many times. Like, listen, I didn't steal your car. You know what I mean? But I get it. They had every right to be pissed off. Yeah, that was the only time. Then I went out guns a-blazing.
I'm good with that.
We-
I'm steamed.
Yeah, I swear to God, yeah.
Thank you.
I didn't say use the F word. I was just like, So when I actually, it was like a Thursday, real quick. I got rated top 3 out of 120 dealerships. That's the group that owned it, and I'm thinking I'm going in on Monday for an attaboy, and I'm getting let go for a stolen car. And then when they were like, "Oh, we're gonna let you go with everything going on," I'm like, "Yeah, right." You know what I mean? Kidding around, so cocky. I'm like, "Wait, you for real?
You had the
You letting
third
me go because of a stolen car?"
And
And,
you
then, and then they're like, "Yeah, well," and then the guy that started talking, I was like, "Who are you?" It was technically, it was like all like,
the big wigs.
VP, yeah. And then this guy was like never a no-show, and he's supposed to show up at least
Was
once
it
a
a
month.
nice car?
No, it was a piece of shit. The thing was worth like maybe $12,000. And I'm like, really? Who are you? You're like a no-show. I was like, and you got no balls, right? You had a car stolen like 2 months ago. You're still here. You know what I mean? They just went down the line. Boom, 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 boom. You know what I mean? I was like, listen, I'm going to leave peacefully, but just so you all know, I was cocky. I'm very confident in what I do. I was like, I'm going to have a job. I was like, this industry's starving for people with my talent. I was like, so you know what? I'm going to be working somewhere. Just know I will be smiling when this place gets bought out because I know all of you will be searching for a job. Enjoy it while it lasts. Somebody give me a ride home.
Yeah. But neon out the mud. Before I get it out the mud, I stay on top of my fitness and hit the shower, clean it up, and then get back to the business. I don't care about who did it, I ain't worried who didn't. I head directly to the back, so I'll be there in a minute. I got expensive taste, the rollie got a different face. For surely I be in them places, they won't let you pass the gate. Post it up, sipping $1,000 scotches with the rock in it.
Are we good to roll?
Enough about me. This show ain't about me.
Yeah. Episode
We can
19.
sit here for 3 hours. You know what I mean? I don't want to do that.
Episode 19, the How You Doing show. We're here with Megan Dobro, SafeTiva Labs. From, where you out of again? Westfield?
The lab is in
No,
Westfield.
you don't
Westfield
pay
State.
attention, dude.
That's what it is.
You don't pay attention.
Yeah. Megan Dobro, SafeTiva Labs, Westfield, Massachusetts.
Right. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Before we get into the big testing stuff that's been going on in the industry, why don't you want to tell us how you came into the industry?
Sure. I was a biology professor at Hampshire College in Amherst. Loved my job. And then Hampshire was going through their own shit where they weren't going to take a fall class, and all the faculty were worried about what are we going to do. And around the same time, a friend of mine from Burning Man reached out and
From
said,
Burning Man,
yeah,
the festival?
yeah.
Okay.
And said, hey, I really want to get into cannabis, and I think testing is the next thing. There were only 2 labs at the time. There were really long turnaround times. And so he said, I'm looking for a scientist who lives in Western Mass who wants to build a lab with me. And it was right at this time where I was trying to do some soul searching about my career. And so I jumped in and I said yes. And we worked on a lab in Northampton first, and that group didn't work out, but I got really passionate about testing cannabis. So I went out on my own and found a building in Westfield and then built it and haven't looked back.
Are you still with the guy from Burning Man?
Nope.
Okay.
They did their own lab and I did my lab and it all worked out for everyone.
I was gonna say, how serious can you take a guy calling you from Burning Man? Right?
Is their lab still in business?
They ended up selling to another lab.
They cashed out, basically.
Yeah. Something like that.
So your passion for testing product, was that so to make sure everything that's going out is clean and legit?
Yeah. So as a mom of 2 kids who I know are going to be party boys when they grow up,
Love them already, then you made them.
and I want them to have a healthy relationship with drugs and
Well, not drugs, but marijuana is not a drug here. We're trying to
medicine.
Get
and
You don't want to use that too freely.
Yeah,
Look
we
at
don't
Rob.
use that word. Yeah. I know you were looking at Rob when you said that, so it probably caused you to slip up, and we get it.
Yeah, so
But we understand what you're saying.
I want
yes.
to keep it safe, and my ultimate goal was to build a lab that eventually consumers would walk into a dispensary and say, "Give me what was tested by SafeTiva Labs," because they knew that it was trusted. That's still my goal. I think we're far off from there, but we're moving in that direction where people can just trust what's on the labels and that it's safe for them.
Since coming into the market, SafeTiva has standed out and amongst some of the top labs for integrity, for clarity, for accurate testing. Did some of your school? How does some of your schooling education play into you being a lab owner? Or
the training in science and research and teaching means that I was always trained to do the right thing and do good scientific practices and follow protocols and document everything. And I hire a lot of people who came from academia or analytical testing from other industries who, it's really serious if you're in an FDA lab, pharmaceutical lab, or food testing, that you have to follow the protocols. There's,
strict.
It's very serious. And so we meet every week to talk about our quality and make sure that we're really on track for accuracy and precision and repeatability. And it's something that's at the forefront of what we do all the time.
But how do you compete with the ones that are not doing that?
That's really hard. And for that reason, our growth has been slower than I had hoped when I first opened the lab. It's been a little bit discouraging because I thought that there would be more of a market for manufacturers especially, but also cultivators who valued real data and that the data would inform their practices for getting good products on the shelves. And there's not as much market for that as I thought there was. But I think we're moving in that direction. And the partners that we have, they seek SafeTiva out because they care about good data. They know that eventually the day of reckoning is coming and they want to be on the right side of that. So just...
It's like cheating on your golf game. How do you know you're going to get better, right?
Right.
Well, everybody gets a mulligan.
I know, but when you're using one every hole, you're not really. How are you going to get your score?
So you found that in the testing industry, you have a lot of repeat business.
Yeah. Typically, someone will sign on with your lab and they'll test with you very consistently over time. And if we see 2 kinds of companies, they try us out, they fail microbial testing, or their potency wasn't as high as they wanted it to be. We never see them again. Right?
Oh, they don't
just
ask
about
you,
to
can
ask
you
that.
bump it up a little bit?
They fired a test shot.
They don't even
come back?
Some of them will tell us why they're leaving, but
Right.
it's not a conversation. They're just gone.
What are some of the things they say why they're leaving? Do they straight out say, "Hey, we failed"?
They
Common
might
sense.
they might tell us why, but it's not like, "Hey, can you do something about it?" They'll say, "Look, we can't sell the product if it's not more than 20% THC, so we have to go somewhere else."
Which is false.
Labs when they fail test.
Yeah.
They say they just allude to why they're leaving.
And
they
they're
don't
not coming
actually
back.
come
No,
out and
they'll
say,
tell
"Hey."
me. They'll tell me exactly why.
Straight
but
up?
it's not. Yeah, straight up. But it's not. They don't try. They're not negotiating. It's not a conversation. It's just
A mic drop.
the.
It's not a concession.
So quick question with that.
Yeah.
If you fail somebody, right, isn't there, we have all these regulations. So shouldn't the regulators be like, okay, you should be able to report when you're getting testing, right? Because it's almost like, okay, test it, And then when do the regulators step in to see the results? Because I'm going to test it. Oh, shit, it failed. Now I'm going to go here. And now that first test nobody knows about.
Yeah. All of the data gets reported into Metric, our seed to sale tracking system, and the state has access to that. The CCC can view that data anytime, but I don't get the sense that they're viewing it in real time to keep track. I think they can go back and pull data reports from it. I think if they had a question that they were going in to look at, that they can do that, but they're not monitoring.
That's what I was
going to
get at. So by the time they test it, it's already too late. It's out being
it's
sold.
out on the shelves. Yeah, you're right. That's why we need people like you to pull it and
so
test it.
why bother?
With testing?
Yeah.
Well, and this is my whole thing is if we can't trust the testing, then there's no difference between the legal market and the black market or the legacy
100%.
market, right? Like,
Well, don't forget about the tax too.
yeah, I mean,
You know what I
there's
mean?
this
Yeah, what's the
huge-
tax for?
There's this huge revenue to the state, but the only value to dispensary products is that people trust that they're safe and that what's on the label is accurate. If you don't have that, then just get some from your
There's no
buddy down the
consumer
road.
confidence.
You know, right? Yeah.
Well-
So I think this is integral to the entire integrity and structure of the industry.
But there is stuff in place. There's legislation in place, regulations. But are they not enforcing the regulations?
No,
or is
obviously.
this?
She
The
just said that.
regulations are vague. There's too much interpretation going on because labs will read the same thing and have different interpretations about what that means. There's a lot of loopholes. There's a lot of cheating that happens, and until now, there hasn't been a whole lot of enforcement. I think it's getting better. I think we've yelled enough about it that they're starting to pay attention, and I'm optimistic that it's getting better. But until now, it's been a total free for all.
You would expect you would think that they wouldn't leave much variable for discretion on how you read bylaws for state licensed labs for testing.
Yeah.
You think it would be pretty cut and dry, like you have to use this machine, you have to do the same process, so it's not open for interpretation.
Yeah, scientists really like things to be black and white and very clear, and when there's interpretation, we get really uncomfortable. And I can't discredit the original writers of the regulations too much. They were doing a really hard thing to build this industry from scratch, and they did a lot of copying and pasting from other states and figuring out what they were doing. But it's fine.
But I see you have you obviously, I see you have some data.
Wow.
But if everybody's doing it the same way and consistent, right? You would think that all the stuff that fails and all the stuff that passes, just across the board between testing labs, that percentage of failure shouldn't be any more than like 10% amongst which one you're going to, right?
Yeah,
So if
yeah.
you got one lab that's passing at 90% rate and you have somebody that's doing it 60%,
Yeah.
right? Shouldn't everybody be right around that?
Yeah.
Maybe 60 to 70%. There shouldn't be that much discretion on in those numbers.
Like the same average, right? You
Right,
should.
that's what I'm saying. Same average across the board.
Right.
So shouldn't that be a red flag?
For you to
Numbers
go
don't
look
lie,
at, right?
That's what you got to look at, right? If you have somebody that's like, you that lucky that you're getting only good shit coming through
Yeah,
your
right.
Your
front
testing
door,
lab, right? Straight, clean product.
And
Right.
and
Yeah, I
take a
mean,
look at the
yeah.
revenue. Well, this guy, that obviously it's one of the reasons why they're doing it. But if you're getting X amount and your revenue's X, right, and this one's getting the same amount and they're making way more money because they're passing way more,
Yeah. I think money is the reason.
I need to get in charge. I'll be in charge. And I don't know shit about weed, but I feel like I can figure this shit out. I'll figure it out. Numbers don't lie, dude. I love numbers. We'll
You're
figure
not
this shit
hopeful
out.
for him?
No, I said I'd vote for you.
Oh,
Yeah,
you
I get
vote
that
for
shit
him.
straight
Jesus
right out.
Christ. Now we're
But
questioning
you
your
gotta put him on
credibility on
blast.
the show.
Listen, you're going to put him on blast. Like, hey, this dude's shit failed.
Yeah. Well, so this is why the data is so important and why I'm so excited about it's all coming out now. And so this is what I've been waiting for. And I wanted to show you guys some of what's happening. And I know you had Yasha on the show a little while ago, and he did an amazing job summarizing the data. So I won't go through. He's the data scientist, but I do want to point to a few resources that we have now that are brand new that have come out. One of them is Medicinal Genomics took all of the data that MCR and Medicinal Genomics received through the FOIA requests of the CCC, and Medicinal Genomics made this amazing portal where you can now visualize it. So They have different views of it. And then you can choose the test date range. You can go by state. You can choose the test type and then go by all of the labs. And it's all anonymous data right now. So this is biotolerant gram negative. That's one category of tests that we test for. And these are all the labs in Massachusetts and their failure rates. So, this would be 5% of this lab's tests fail for biotolerant gram negatives. And so on this website, you can go by test, you can check some, unmark some, and then you can really view this data. And soon it's going to be de-anonymized where we know which labs it is. And that's the day I'm really excited.
Well, what I do,
Yeah, right. And I think that's what you're going to start holding some people's feet to the fire.
Yeah.
Now,
What
do
I
you
do
think
right
the
is-
regulations are, you see them getting a little tighter? Like checking a little more?
The regulations take a long time to edit, and I think they're committed to doing that process. The commissioners seem, at least, they've been really good about listening, and they're committed to making those changes, but it takes time. And so before that happens, I think there needs to be a grassroots effort to boycott brands that use labs or boycott the labs that aren't doing things ethically.
Exactly.
And I think we're getting there. You guys
But
are a part of
but
that
you-
effort with potency.
That has to be the job of the people regulating it. I just don't understand how something's so clear cut.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know shit about
What
it.
could
But
be more
you
important
look at
than
some numbers, you're like,
safety?
hey, something ain't right there.
Yeah, it's like they're all sitting on their hands.
Right.
But like you say, it takes some time. You've been advocating for this. I seen you at Boston Freedom Rally give a speech.
I recently testified at the State House about this issue. So the legislators are paying attention.
That was the joint.
The Joint Committee for
Yep.
Cannabis Policy. So they're paying attention. They're very concerned about this. We're going to be putting some bills forward soon through the Mass Cannabis Coalition, and I just joined the board for that group. And they're writing bills, so they're really trying to make the change from the top down.
What's the mission statement of the Mass Cannabis Coalition? Like,
So
what's
they
the
have
purpose?
good representation of different businesses in Massachusetts. They try to get a good cross section of everyone as part of the membership, and then we set our priorities for what changes do we want to make, and then really advocate for those, and actually show up at the State House and write the bills and advocate for the change. And that group was really helpful in getting the 2-driver rule extended to, or the removal of the 2-driver rule extended to testing labs. So I'm seeing a lot of benefit in being a part of this advocacy group that focuses on policy.
So is it a lot of it's a lot of business owners,
Yeah.
like delivery, cultivators,
Yeah.
manufacturers, people testing
and,
labs?
and
Okay.
MSOs to the small companies and
Okay.
everything in between. And it's growing. It's a new company. So if you're looking to be a member, come join us.
Do you think
Jesus.
jail? Do you think like as far as somebody really digging in, right? You find that you have this testing lab and this facility is always going there. They both know that it's bad, and you have people that are smoking stuff that's unhealthy, right? They got cancer and everything else, and they're smoking this unhealthy product. Do you think it's going to take somebody doing a little bit of time to maybe open up everybody's eyes to be like, this is what's going to happen? You can't sell shit with like salmonella in it.
Yeah.
well, that's what they're
there's-
doing the remediation. They remediate their weed, then they get it out, test it, and there you go.
Yeah.
And it's money.
We're going to start seeing some class action lawsuits very
Really?
soon.
Damn.
Yeah.
And I think I think it comes down to money, and big fines are going to,
It's the only
people
way it's going to
straight.
change
Right,
is
right.
the money because it's controlled by the
A
money.
fine that makes sense. You know what? The fine is going to be as big as the crop that you lose.
yeah. I think the hard part is understanding who's culpable in a situation. If a product is tested off the shelf and it's bad, it shouldn't go to consumers. Was it the producer that cherry picked or microwaved the sample, or they somehow
They
adulterated
remediated
just the testing sample, or is it the lab that they don't have good processes, or they're finding loopholes and actually cheating, or is it both? And so that can be really hard to
Do you think it's ever
understand.
going to come to a point where you go into the facility to go pick what it is,
could
so there's
be.
no cheating?
That's how it is in a lot of other states. Yeah.
Because frankly, if you're doing a test for somebody, you're putting your name, your brand
Right.
on this label package,
Right.
but you're not allowed to go pick the sample to stand behind
Right. So
said batch.
Yeah.
You know,
we can only test what we're given, and we have no idea what happened to that sample before it came to our lab.
That's a problem
Or
right
if
there in
that sample
itself.
is representative of the entire batch, or is this just what they chose for their testing sample?
Right. Because in the cannabis space, it seems like so many of these people, it's like they just, like a lot of these brands, they just pass the blame. It's like, hey, I'm the brand, but somebody maybe buys some product at the dispensary and it's on the shelf for like 9 months. And then they try to blame the consumer for buying it. But it's like, it was on the shelf for 9 months. Like, this is the representation that I got. And then the brand says, oh, it's not us. It's the retailer. Well, you're the brand giving it to the retailer. Yeah. If you know the product's going to sit on the shelf for that long, maybe you should slow down growing some weed until, demand meets, supply.
Right.
Or make better shit so it sells.
And clean. But, it's like everybody's just quick to point the finger. It seems like not much responsibility, And you're trying to do your job properly, but you can't even know you don't even know if the sample came from the said batch that you're, as a scientist,
we have no visibility.
Putting your name on.
Right. Yeah. Which is why when people ask me, am I happy that I did this? Building a testing lab. If I knew then what I know now,
Nope.
I don't know that I would do this.
No way.
This is terrible. I hate this.
That's what I was going to ask you.
It's a terrible position to be in because people are mad at me all the time. Either I could never ask my employees to cheat, right? They would all quit tomorrow. I could never do that. Nor would I be able to sleep at night. I might as well not do it if I was going to do that. But I'm pissing off my clients all the time when I have to call them and tell them, look, man, I know you just remediated your whole facility to fix this problem, but you still have a mold problem.
You missed a spot.
Yeah, you missed a spot.
Would you
It's
say
terrible.
on this graph that the higher the line, the better the lab?
Well, it all depends which category you're in, I think.
So let me zoom in. This is failure rates for total yeast and mold. Yeah.
SafeTiva's yellow?
So SafeTiva's yellow. So we're here. And I labeled the labs at the bottom who have said who they are.
I seen this post on LinkedIn.
Yeah. And there's quite a bit of variability. This is just for total yeast and mold. And this is by failure rate. So this is 12% of the products that come through that lab fail for total yeast and mold.
That adds up.
It adds up, yeah.
But it doesn't seem like that's a big number, though.
Yeah, but
enough to like
pounds.
You got to account for failure when you're when you're talking with produce. You always have to account for failure dealing with produce. Like there's always a percentage
it's by cultivator
shrinkage.
too. Some cultivators have 0% because maybe they remediate everything, and some cultivators they fail 80% of the time. But a lab is made up of diversity of cultivators.
Yeah, so if you're failing 12% of the time, right, that means 12 pounds 100, right? Basically.
Yeah, so it's by 15-pound batches is the max that they're allowed, and if they fail a sample, the whole batch fails. They have to destroy it or remediate it.
Or they can make something else with it.
Or they can make something else, which is I categorize as remediating if they.
Okay.
But even remediating the weed, right? It's still not healthy.
We don't know.
Is that a question, Rick?
It's kind of like both, right?
We don't know.
Like I guess the question is it going to get to a point where there's no more remediating weed? And if you don't have, if it's either it passes or it fails, right? Well, there's no more cleaning it up.
We just don't know what the safety is. There's not enough research to tell us. My opinion is that it should be labeled on the product label, on the packaging, was it remediated or not, and what specifically was done. I think the consumer has the right to transparency about that.
100%.
But we just don't know.
And I know in food stuff gets remediated, but isn't ingesting it a lot?
You're consuming it regardless.
Less.
It's different from inhaling it.
From inhaling it, right? There's a lot more.
You can wash your fruit. You can't really wash your cannabis.
Right.
But the problem with this graph is that there are a lot of labs who have under 5% failure rates, which is much lower than national averages.
Those are the ones making the most money because they're
probably making
cheating,
the most money.
It looks like.
So we have some zeros, we have some near zeros, we have some that are under 5%.
Wow, they must have really good growers.
2%, 3%.
Yeah, so I'm really glad that the data's out there now, and anyone can go to this portal and look at it, which is great.
Can you break it down as far as I know all these labs, it's broken down their failure rate, but can you show how much of the market actually of that product
they
makes
have.
up? Like
don't know.
of how many pounds are sitting on the street? Like maybe this guy's, does 10 times more tests than the other lab.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah, but the
or
average
100
should
times
still be
more
the
tests
same.
than the other lab.
That's what I was saying earlier. The
Yeah.
average should still be the same.
I was just
if you
trying to
do
see
more
how
or
much.
less.
Like I was just seeing if the biggest players
Yeah.
were had the highest failure, the
Right.
least amount failures.
It's a good question, and part of the portal that you can see in some of these up here, when you click on the letters, it will show you number of samples that are
Okay.
included in there, so then you can get a better sense of how big the lab is, and it's for all time, and so some labs weren't open that long, so they have smaller data sets. All of the tests, so you can see there's a lot of variability here. And this yellow bar is where SafeTiva sits. There's, again, the
one or
labs
two.
are all over the place. So this is why when someone sends the same sample, and it's not always, if it's flour, it can't be the same, but you can send samples to the same lab, to multiple labs, and get wildly different results.
And that's why look at the yeast and mold, how much different everybody is.
And that's because of how the regs are written, or
Because the regs allow us to use any technology, because there's not a lot of oversight in our quality systems, there can be a large variability in how well people are trained. And these categories are very broad, and the regulations don't tell us what should be included. So yeast and mold, that's a huge, broad category, and they don't tell us what species should be included. So I don't think this is happening, but a lab could test for 2 species and call it a yeast and mold test. And there's nothing prohibiting them in the regulations right now from doing that, compared to a lab that could be testing 200 species.
How many are you supposed to?
They don't
How many
tell
should
us.
you? How many? If you had to put the parameters, how many do you think you should?
Well, if I had a magic wand and I could change things about specifying how we do the testing, I would remove these categories altogether because they're meaningless. There's a lot of good bacteria, or harmless bacteria that are in these categories that cultivators are being penalized for. So I would make it species specific and say we have to test for Aspergillus, we have to test for E. coli and Salmonella, and instead focus on the harmful species that we know makes people sick.
That's the first time I've heard somebody say there's good bacteria.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of good bacteria. Yeah, your body depends on it. It's living in you and on you all the time.
Oh, I'm sure of that. I'm definitely sure of that.
yeah, dirty mother.
I also wanted to show you that this is a chart of the species that are included in each test by vendor. These are called inclusivity lists. So these are the species that have been confirmed to be able to be detected. This is 3M plating, Biomerio, medicinal genomics, and pathogen DX. And it's not important to read the list, but what's important is to see the color coding. So green is that species is detected across all 4 platforms. Yellow is only 3, red is only 2, and white is only 1 platform can detect that species. So there's a lot of variability across these platforms. And so if someone is sending a sample to multiple labs and they have a contamination that is focused on one of these species, that platform may not pick it up at all.
Are those all negative species, or are some of them?
Nope. Some of them are good. Some of them are neutral.
So if I was a cultivator and if I knew which test had more, less of the positive ones, that's probably be the facility that if I was a live soil.
And you knew what species you had in your facility and you wanted to pass testing,
Send to a different lab.
send to a lab where that species is not on this list.
So you're
That
saying-
makes no sense. Why would each lab, if the testing's supposed to represent a standard across
there's
all
no
products to the consumer when they buy it, right? As a consumer, you go and buy this product. Boom. Every consumer is going to treat that the same way.
Yeah.
But
There's
what's
no
actually
standards.
going on? There's no standards.
There's no standards. Everyone's doing something different.
So it's the wild, wild west.
Yeah,
wild,
a
wild
ton of
west.
loopholes.
Damn.
Yeah. Yep.
Call them
it's
more
crazy.
like doorways, not even loopholes.
Yeah, just like here you go.
It is wide open.
Detours.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
Wouldn't you just come up with a Is that what you're trying to do? Have
Yeah.
a mandatory list of harmful
These are the species we have to test for, and then have a whole bunch of species that aren't required, but that would be optional for the cultivator to show, hey, look, we don't have any of this either. That's how I would do it.
Do you think the regulators need to appoint a scientist?
They have some scientists on their staff, and
sounds
they've
like they're pretty
hired
good.
more, and they've gotten better. But they're a little late to the party.
You're way more positive than I would.
I'm trying.
I'd be like, no, these guys suck.
I'm trying to be positive because I'm trying to work with them to make it better. And if I just insult them, they're not going to want to
No,
work
you're not
with me,
insulting them, but if they suck, they suck. They got to know that. They're like, listen, you need to do a little more studying. Did you really pass?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I
like,
think-
how'd you get this job? There's different ways you can kind of bring it about.
I think she's gonna do it with the white glove
Yeah,
treatment.
she's gonna clean it up a little bit better, but
better than we would do. You know,
I'd be like,
Ricky, kick your front door in.
yeah, right. You know what I mean?
Appointed by the Treasury Department, the people in charge.
The commissioners are appointed by different people. Like,
Wasn't there like 7 or 8 of them that one of the guys was saying, Trevor, that they were appointed by like the treasurer's office or?
It sounds
I
like
think
they're
she
all-
appointed the direct. Did the treasurer's office appoint the director?
I don't know.
Or yeah, she's
Problem
not.
is, people are appointing people that don't know
That's
what they're
not what
doing. We
she's
say it
here
every
for,
on every
Rob.
show.
Yeah.
Good thing I don't smoke weed.
But I was-
I got
stuff.
it. I got it right here in my notes. But you don't need more.
His notes. It's in crayon. Don't worry about it.
Well,
It may or may not be accurate.
no, it says one treasurer, governor 1, attorneys generals 1. All 3 get a pick, and all other 2 get picked by treasurer, governor, and attorney general.
That sounds about. I don't know.
There you
That
have
was
it.
Blake Mensing.
Oh, Blake said that.
Yeah, that was-
okay.
Is he on the
yeah.
show too?
Yeah.
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 I quote him because he was on point with the law.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
He knows the law.
And the law
Blake
won.
Menson, firebrand.
Yeah.
But I was talking to you before, like maybe a month or a couple weeks ago, whenever we were chatting, and you had said that you used to test for powdery mildew,
Yeah.
and one brand came to you and they realized you were testing for powdery mildew because they failed, and then they weren't trying to test with you again because of powdery mildew, and you actually called, the regulators, right? And they said
Yeah.
you don't have to test for powdery mildew.
Yeah. So we had a client who, and powdery mildew is so common in these grow facilities. And one client brought up to us that they know they had powdery mildew, they could see it, and then they were failing the test. So they were asking, am I failing because of powdery mildew? Because other labs aren't testing for powdery mildew. Someone at MCR, I think his name is Michael Esposito, gave a talk at NECAN once about powdery mildew and how they don't test for it. And because that was public, my client said, look, MCR is not testing for powdery mildew, so why am I getting penalized at your lab? So that's when I reached out to all of the vendors and asked all of them, is powdery mildew included? And I learned that Pathogen DX, the system that we use, is the only system that was including powdery mildew. So I reached out to my inspectors at the CCC and I said, is there anything that says that I have to include powdery mildew? And they never gave me an answer.
Of course not.
So is powdery mildew easy to get rid of? Sounds like you just blow it off.
No, listen.
No, it's very prevalent in the cannabis buds, and you can see it with your eyes, and it's so common in the industry. It's not one of those species that is very harmful to humans. It's not it doesn't commonly cause infections, but we've spoken about how some people have allergies to powdery mildew, and it can be serious in those few cases. But because the CCC doesn't have a list of species that need to be included, everyone is trying to copy what plating is testing for. And so even though the PCR companies could test for powdery mildew, they don't include it because plating doesn't, and they want to match.
Oh,
and so that's when
nice.
I reached out to my vendor and I said, can we have an option so they turned it on or off. So they added an extra probe in the PCR system so we can see when there's powdery mildew, and when there is, we can plate it and give numbers that don't include powdery mildew.
Okay.
So once you plate it, then you can get the exact numbers.
Because powdery mildew doesn't grow on plates.
Right.
Well, my issue, even though it's not that harmful, powdery mildew, I think they should test it anyway because it's pretty much a grade of quality, and it should be listed. But even if the reason why I brought it up, one of my friends I grew up with, a childhood friend, he doesn't smoke weed, and he was all buzzed up at a family party, and his cousin smoked a pre-roll with him from the store. Yeah. And for like a week, he thought he had pneumonia, and he had to go to the doctor, and because he's allergic to mildews and molds and stuff like that. So like, if if that's the case where there's one person, one consumer that could have that issue, it should be labeled on the packaging at least, even if it doesn't fail you for a test, just to show the grades at least. Another thing.
Yeah.
It's no
you
different
know?
than a peanut allergy, right?
Yeah.
Stuff that's made, it might not have like peanuts or anything in it, but it might be made with some byproduct of it. That could be harmful.
Really careful.
Okay.
You can't even go get a donut nowadays without them asking you, you're allergic? Not the donuts. I probably should be.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe.
I wish I was.
Yeah, Ricky's scale's allergic to donuts.
So you're saying in Massachusetts right now we don't have standardized industry testing where everybody's got to test for the same thing?
No, far from it.
Wow.
It's very far from that point.
So that
How are we going to get to that point? Are
Maybe
you
you want
guys
another water?
lobbying them or?
Yeah, we're trying to make a list of the changes we want to make. Two of the commissioners were at my lab just yesterday, and we were talking about, here's my list of changes that I would make. Please
Yeah.
do this.
Well, it sounds like
was it a real good meeting, or was it dog and pony show? Because it was after wasn't there just another hearing before that
Yeah,
on testing?
Yeah.
And the labs collectively gave a statement.
right. Yeah, there was a public listening session about testing, and the labs said our number one ask is that you please include us in the conversation. There are a lot of changes that we need to make, and we see it firsthand. You can't make these changes in a vacuum if you don't know what's happening on the ground. So hopefully they're going to do that. And
They called the meeting and they want you to speak on in the public about maybe some of your clients, right? So is that why nobody really gave a particular statement?
We're not gonna publicly talk about the loopholes and the cheating that we see, and but we can show them where the loopholes are and encourage them to change it.
But why wouldn't they follow the states that are already doing it correctly?
There aren't that many states that are doing it correctly. I think opening the data, making the data public is the number one thing that we can do. That it shows where the outlying labs are and what they're doing, and that's the best way. And already we're seeing it's known which labs are outliers, and we're now seeing wholesale buyers who refuse to buy product that were tested with specific labs because they don't believe the COA, which is great because now
The rumors are on the street.
now there's actual demand for testing at reputable labs.
So basically what's happening is for you to be a straight lab, straight shooter, and you test everything properly, you're losing business from this.
A lot of
You're
business.
losing
A lot of business.
A lot of business
A lot
according
of
to your
business.
charts. So what I think what the state should do is they should just do some independent testing, and that would just uncover all of this.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Agreed.
It seems like it's an easy fix.
Yeah, it kind of is, but even with this data that you see, if people are cheating before they send the sample in, even some of this data is like not accurate because if people are cheating on the samples, the actual failure rate should actually be higher probably than what it is because if people are doctoring most samples going in.
Right, and I think that goes back to what we said
It would
earlier.
even be higher.
The testing lab should be going into the facilities, right?
Yeah,
Well-
but look what that would cost, though. With that.
Well, are you picking up the samples at some of these
Yeah, we pick them up.
cultivators?
Yep.
So you guys are allowed to.
We're there and they hand us the package and we weigh the package, but it's already in its packaging.
So
We
you're
don't
already.
open it until we're at our lab.
So technically, you're already
We're there. We're there. Yeah.
Yeah, but you're not picking it. You're
Yeah,
getting
but
it
what's
still.
that going to take? Another
Few steps.
15, 20 minutes? I mean,
That's what I'm
whatever.
saying.
It's an extra $50.
yeah. It's high enough as it is.
Yeah.
Because this testing probably adds up for some of these places that are doing a lot of product.
What's the average on a test?
The cost?
Yeah, on like a flower test. If
A flower panel is about $500 for the full panel.
But you get everything on that you had listed on that test?
So you get pesticides, heavy metals, potency, terpenes, microbials, so yeast, mold, bacteria. So you get the full list of all of the safety checks.
Must have some pretty heavy duty equipment over there at the lab.
Oh yeah. Yep.
So if that's messed up for the yeast and mold, how fucked up is the pesticide testing? How many can people test for different pesticides on that
testing,
test? Or is that strict? Like
So Massachusetts is strict by the limit is very low, so you can't have even trace amounts. It's 10 parts per billion. the limit. So
It's like nothing.
But
like
what about
nothing.
varieties though?
but
Because
there's
how
only
the
9. There's only 9 pesticides on the list, which is one of the smallest states by length of list.
But
And so
those are defined?
Everyone just knows, don't bring these 9 pesticides into the facility at all. So we hardly ever see pesticide hits.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out why so there were 9 specific pesticides picked out on the panel,
Yeah.
but yeast and mold, it's
Yeah.
whatever you want to throw together.
Right.
So, so I wonder what, what's this testing for then?
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's a little bit different now that you're in the business than what you thought the business would be when you started,
Yeah.
I would say.
Grass is always greener over there.
We're getting there. I'm optimistic that we're making incremental progress, and I'd rather be a part of the conversation to move it forward,
Right.
rather than leave it up to those who were here just.
It's
before
pretty
me.
sad when the state's behind the lab. Basically, the lab's way ahead of the state on the testing, and the state's behind on the regulations.
So when you mean the regulations were loose, is that what you're talking about with just pertaining to the yeast and mold test? Or is there more things like how they selected, like open selection for species is open to however you want?
Yeah.
Is there more things that are loose with testing?
Yeah. So if you take cannabinoid testing as an example, they don't tell us, should we take 3 samples and average them? Should we take 3 samples and take the best of 3? Should we just do 1? Should we call the cultivator and say, hey man, it was only 18. Do you want to send another sample in? There are all these ways that
Well, they're doing
the
it now.
regulations aren't clear.
They're doing it now.
And so right now they can send samples to 7 labs and pick the one that was highest and put that on the label. So
There you go.
there's just, they don't tell us how to, so we homogenize the samples. We grind them all up together to make sure that it's well mixed.
Yeah.
But they don't specify how we should do that. A lab could put all the keef in one tube and the interior of the bud into the microbial
Different potency.
testing. And yeah, they can, there are many practices that aren't specifically banned in the regulations, right? It's unethical, and every good scientist should know that that's not how you should do it. But if they were to be audited and someone told them they can't do that, they might say, well, show me where it says that.
Why are you allowed to send it to 7 different labs?
Yeah.
And you get to choose which one it is.
Right. So they actually just changed, well, not officially changed, but they're talking about changing on Thursday, that you can no longer do a la carte testing. You have to do a full panel with one lab for each sample. It doesn't mean that they couldn't then do a full panel at the other lab, but it means another $500, which they're less likely to want to do, as opposed to the $50 it costs to do a potency test. So they're trying to make it so that there's less lab shopping. I think that's only one baby step toward fixing the problem, but I think that'll probably happen soon.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
They should make that clear though, that one batch, one test
Yeah.
to one place.
Right.
And then if you fail, maybe it gets retested again
Right.
from a different place or the same
Right.
place.
Yeah.
You know, but it's going to get marked that it failed the first time,
Right.
so that it's on record.
Right.
You know.
Yep.
But when you go to do the resample though, that's where the hole is. Where, well, all right, I sent it to this one lab, I failed. All right, now let me doctor this sample before I send it to the next lab, so
Yeah.
so it has to pass.
Right. Yep. Pop it in the microwave.
So it's
They're
still
just
nothing.
window shopping, basically.
I just said that.
And you can, what's the microwave? No, it's literally a microwave.
microwave.
I
Like-
said no, nuke it.
No. Some of these motherfuckers will be in the break room or whatever and just put that 7 grams in a microwave and nuke it real quick.
Yeah.
Right after somebody put a sandwich in it?
Remember the expression back in the 80s? Just nuke it.
Just nuke it.
Just nuke it. That was an old
Yeah.
expression.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you shouldn't be nuking your weed at a legal place, like from licensed professionals.
Yeah, that face.
Yeah.
That's the face you should have. That's the face I want everyone to have.
So you really can't move forward unless they do something with that, how the sample gets picked first.
We need the
Because-
regulations to change, and we need the data to out people and ruin their reputations if they're doing this.
Put them out of business.
They
shouldn't be in business.
And class action lawsuits, and it needs to come from both directions. We need the
Yes.
regulations
Yes.
and the grassroots effort to shame people who are doing
Yeah, but
this.
if the
Right.
state could just do it themselves without, if they just listened, got the proper information from the people that know about it, made a rational decision, and implemented it with, the state sends somebody there and goes to this dispensary and that dispensary and buys it, and they send it out to a testing lab, and then they get exposed.
Right.
Well, these graphs, didn't they come out and say that they'll be able to line up the actual labs with these graphs
Yeah, not
from
yet.
medicinal genomics here?
I don't know if Medicinal Genomics has committed to naming the labs, but the CCC is trying to get the labs named.
Kind of is
Wait,
public
oh,
record. isn't
they
it?
came out and said that publicly?
Yeah.
That they were trying
Commissioner Roy has said in public meetings that she's working on de-anonymizing the data.
It would take 1 second to go look at the thing.
Yeah.
Look at the computer and then write an email.
Yep.
It would literally take all of 2 seconds.
I don't know what the holdup is.
I don't understand.
They're busy.
She's working on it.
They're very busy.
Maybe she forgot her password to get back into the computer.
Yeah.
I have no idea. Can she open her email?
She left the computer at home that day.
There's a white envelope that's preventing her from doing that.
She's held up by an envelope. That's what you're saying,
That's
Ricky?
what it is. Yeah, I think it's
Always
thick.
about payoffs.
Yeah.
with
Get
you.
Rick,
know what I mean?
2 tickets to the Nutcracker.
Think about it.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Okay, so
Well, so right now, the Certified Remediation Free program that Luke McPeters and Jeff Rawson have been working on, it's
And you're the lab, right?
It's a legal document that the cultivator has to sign, like a sworn affidavit that says that they don't remediate, and then there's an inspection process, and SafeTiva is the lab that does the inspection process, and we go in and we make sure that there's no remediation technology in there, and we ask them to walk us through the whole process from seed to cure to packaging, show us everything and make sure. And then if they pass that process, they get a symbol on their packaging that is the certified remediation free symbol.
So you walk through the facility, but some of these places are sending their weed out to get
Yeah.
remediated and then coming
Right.
back.
Yeah.
Is there
so
anything?
that's where the sworn affidavit comes in.
Okay.
It's a legal document that
That
they
binds
have
them?
agreed that they don't do that.
Because they'll be sued for giving the certification a bad name.
Right. Yep.
So
The company-
money preventing people from doing things, right?
Money changes
makes
everything.
people do things, and it prevents people from doing things too.
Yeah.
It's even before. I don't know.
But if you're doing
there's
that-
a lot of work to do, right? Because you got to stop them from remediating before they send out to testing. You've got to stop them from being able to fraudulently mishandle this sample that they're sending out for testing individually to you, right? You got to figure out the chain of custody there. There's an issue.
That's
Sounds like
my
there's a
point
lot
that
of
I'm trying to
problems
make.
here.
But if you're a company that's sending it beforehand, right? That's another cost. If you know you're growing good stuff, I understand why you say just in case it's got a little bit of that dust mold, right? Whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to send it to get remediated first. You obviously already know, right? Because why would you spend the money remediating it first
Ricky.
and then to send it? I get it. It's because you're scared because it might be bad, so you want it to pass. My point is, once it goes there, because you already know your shit sucks, that's why you're remediating it first, right? It should automatically be flagged. Bang. Goes into that box, it comes out with a flag on it.
is that Pandora's
There's nothing.
box?
Yeah, whatever.
But
Pandora's
there's
box.
nothing in the regs saying they're going to
That's
track
my
anything.
point. Very easily fixed.
But these people too, they're just putting a sample in a microwave and sending it out for testing.
Yeah, it's like
They're
a steak.
they're not going to advocate to try to make themselves document going into this box.
But quick-
The companies that are doing it.
They make more money.
Hey, quick
remediating
question.
it.
We had
it's
Sparks
cheap.
on here, right? Do you think the passion that we saw about their product, they're going to send that shit to get remediated before they do any testing?
No.
That's the company
Not
that you want to
them.
buy from, right? Them and everybody else doing it like that. That's my point. If you're sending something to go get tested, right? You know you did something.
Well, if they
You're not going to get an HIV test just to go get it,
yeah, you're right.
right?
Right.
That's kind of a weird analogy.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
Somebody
you know
get
what I mean?
Rick another drink over
hey,
here.
Doc, you just test me out for some things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Why? What'd you do? Nothing. I was by myself all weekend. I just want to get tested for maybe any bacteria.
Yeah, give me a yeast and mold test.
Rick was in the Navy, by the way.
Yeah. It just shit makes no sense.
Yeah, Spark is a certified remediation free company, so they put on their packaging that they don't.
Yeah, they were
remediate.
here actually talking about that.
Yeah,
I was gonna
right.
bring it up 'cause I seen it in the notes.
But the people need to see the passion that these owners have that it's like, hey, we're going to give you some quality stuff and it's healthy, right?
Yeah, that's great, but we're here talking about testing, Rick.
I know. But I'm just saying that's what we need to follow to fix it.
Well, that's the thing. The brands are shitty. They do shitty practices, and they're going to continue to do shitty practices unless some regulations get changed, which she's been advocating for.
Thank you.
Or unless there's market demand for changing your practice.
Thank you for making my point. And
There you
arguing.
go.
Well, how are they going to
Thank you
find
very
out? You need to find out and actually publicize who these bad labs are and what brands they
100%,
are.
that's
and
my
then
point.
people can really say, hey, these are the bad actors. Then maybe I haven't seen anybody like protest and picketing outside of anybody's places yet. Has that ever happened yet? Is that the next step?
I think first the data need to come out and the labs need to get named, and then we'll get there.
You need to name the names.
But it
the
seems
names
like
need to come
but
out.
it seems if you have to put a percentage on it, it's almost like 50-50 what you're buying that could have a lot of bad shit in it. And that percentage is like way too high.
It might be higher than that, Rick, but I
I
think
think
what
so,
the
too.
state should do is they should come out and say, listen, as of this date, here's the new regulations, here's how it's going to be. If you guys are messing around, all your stuff comes off the product, and you'll see how much people straighten out when it comes down to the money.
Yep.
Because that's all it's about.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're going to push
If
a
you're
bunch of
growing-
bad shit before that date comes out.
If you're growing a lesser product and you have to remediate it and this and that, you got to do this and that to get it cheap enough for them to sell to make a profit. They should have a certain date. This stuff gets tested a certain way. This is it. That's it. Everybody does the same testing. Not different testing at one lab, different testing at another lab. It's ludicrous.
And the quality goes up too.
Did we shut down the slideshow, or is there more slides?
No, there's more. So
All right.
there's a lot of conversation out there about plating versus PCR, and I wanted to clear up some things because I get really frustrated when I hear other independent journalists or podcasts, not you guys.
Yeah, we don't know. We don't claim to really know anything.
I get really frustrated when people claim to know one is better than the other, and anyone who says that has an agenda. They don't actually know. They're just different. There are pros and cons of each method, and so if you guys are willing to indulge me for a minute to explain the two, I'd love for consumers to understand the
Go ahead,
difference.
because I'm a complete imbecile. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, so when people say plating, they're typically using either agar plates or these films, these Petri films, and you use a pipette and you put a mil of your sample on it, and then you close the film and you put it in an incubator. So it's very fast, very cheap, like very fast to do. You have to wait days to get results, but it's really easy to do.
You put it in.
Are those all different?
Yeah, so this is
Species
like
or something all in one
Enterobacter test, which people use as a proxy for the bile-tolerant gram-negatives. So this is a coliform plate, and you can see here that there are colonies growing. So after a certain amount of time, you count the number of colonies.
That's the little black
That
things
gives you
on
your
there?
number.
Yeah, these dots here.
Like birthmarks.
Here's another example of what a plate looks like. So the benefits of plating, they're very easy to use. They're quick to use. They're easy for people to understand. So I think they like it because visually you can see, look at all of the colonies. So when a cultivator fails, it's easier to convince them that it's real and it's not our problem when I can show them a plate and see, look how gross this plate is. That came from your bud. So I think it's more intuitive for people. It only counts cells that are alive and can grow. And so that's all the state requires. So it's a natural filter for the dead cells. And then proficiency tests are these blind tests that you can buy online, and they send you a sample, and then you test it in your lab and you send the results back and they tell you, are you right or wrong? And we're required by our ISO requirements to do these proficiency tests. And those are widely available for plates, not for molecular methods like PCR.
Can dead cells come back?
Not if they're truly dead. But there are
Jesus did.
like
Wait a minute. What about the water beer?
yeah. Well, they're not truly dead when you
guess
kill
not.
them.
That's what I'm saying.
They're
How do you
very
know?
hardy.
How do you know one's not playing then it comes back?
Yeah, well, actually, this has been documented in remediated flour where it won't grow on a plate immediately, but then if you wait a while and plate it, you might start they
See, I was
might
paying
come back.
attention when Jeff was talking, unlike some
Yeah.
other people around there.
You're not wrong, Ricky. Plating downsides, they don't cover all the species within a broad category. So these companies have a really hard job where they have to try to create a plate that grows all yeast and mold, and they grow in different conditions. So it's automatically going to exclude some species based on the plate.
It's already spoiled, right? If you're doing it that way, I mean, how can you win?
Yeah, you can't get all the species in there for sure. And so I find this is all through my own experience.
They're trying to put more people on like a little plate more in the neighborhood to make it quicker.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, right.
Oh my Lord. Yeah, so I see more false negatives with plating.
See? Distraction.
There
I mean,
are harmful species that don't grow well on plates, and there's also off-target growth that can cause miscounting. Plating is less safe for employees because they're growing stuff in the lab, and so
Wow, that looks gross.
yeah. So employees might get exposed to these cells.
It looks like the bottom of my cup holder.
so do you got to do more plates for more different species you're testing for, or is it just one
It's
plate?
the same for PCR. So there's one plate for coliforms. There's one PCR test for coliforms, right? So there's one test for the vendors make each test for the regulations.
And that's where you get the difference in species from the different labs that you go to because of the test that they
The
use.
different vendors.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So the species can't be identified based on the plates except for some color indicators. So on this plate, you can see there's two different things growing, but it doesn't tell you what species they are. And then the technician has to interpret the plate and count them, which is very variable between people. So like looking at this plate, one person might count 150, one person might count 300, and that can determine a pass or a fail just based on the variability in counting. And so
Or
these
color
are
or-
very clean plates actually in terms of like they're very straightforward. But when you break up the buds and then you put them on plates, there's a lot of debris. So there's a lot of spots that show up on the plates that aren't actually colonies. So it can get very difficult to count these. So these are, it's up for interpretation. That makes it difficult.
I thought there was species that different each test,
These,
different brand, they had different species of molds, you were saying, and spores. No? Is that a completely different test?
I'm not sure I understand what
Scroll
you're
back up a
thinking
little
about.
bit. No, the other way.
Chatting with
These?
Neanderthals.
No, more again. Right here.
Oh, yeah. So these
Is
are
this
the
pertaining to what you were just
yeah.
showing
So
us?
these are this column on the left, the 3M plates. Those are what I'm showing you. These films, and
Okay.
so these are all the species that it might be, but it doesn't tell you what it is.
Oh.
It just tells you
I
it might
could
be
tell
on,
you just
it
got
might be
that.
one of
No,
these
because
on this list.
I didn't know if they were individually testing for each one of those things.
No.
You're saying it's just they're testing and it might be that. So
this-
now when they look at that, when you scroll back down, when they look at it, they're just adding up.
Right.
They don't know which one's which.
They don't know what
It's
species
almost like
they
a
are.
general test.
It's a very general test.
Okay.
So there's a plate and it's called the total yeast and mold plate. And that's it. It could be any species within that list.
Damn.
That's
So
on
they're
there.
actually testing for nothing.
It could be good species. We have no idea what's in here.
It's absolutely.
So
for
when do you
nothing.
find out?
You don't. You don't.
That's what I'm saying. It's
why test
absolutely
it?
a useless test.
It's meaningless.
Like, would an expert be able to differentiate what species
Well, you can
some of
send
that
it out
stuff
for
is?
speciation. So
Okay.
you can spend the money and wait 3 weeks and get more species information. But the state doesn't require that. They just want a total number for yeast and mold generally.
And why
They
would you
don't
want to
ask
find
for
out?
any species information.
If I'm selling stuff, I want it to pass. I'm not going to say,
You don't.
hey, check it. Just double check it just in case. I might want to fail.
No, now I understand why people want it thrown out because it says it could be any of those, but you don't even know if it's any of those.
Yeah.
But you're giving a result on that and you're failing somebody and you actually know
Right.
And it could be good.
no information
Right.
other than
Right.
that something grew there.
Right. So PCR gets a little more specific. So PCR stands for polymerase chain reaction. And it's just basically amplifying DNA. It's copying DNA. So with each round, you get the doubling effect by putting them in these tubes, in these thermal cyclers that cycle between hot and cold over specified times. And then what you get is a whole lot of DNA. And at SafeTiva, we use the Pathogen DX system, and we have these microarray plates that have these 96 holes in them. On the bottom is a glass plate, and on the plate is printed these circular probes, and they have these DNA matches on them for the specific species that that platform looks for. So these might be a variety of yeast and mold. So all the DNA that you copied, they float around until they might bind to that DNA. And part of the process was that we put a fluorescent marker on it, shown by this little star here.
Yeah.
And so then you put it in a microarray machine, and it shows you the light from those fluorescent markers in these dots. And we test everything in triplicate. So you get 3 dots for each test that there is. And the plate scans it, and it will read how much fluorescence is there. And based on the quantification of the fluorescence, they can calculate how much DNA must have been in the original sample. And that tells you the quantification number. So it's very high tech.
Does this
It's
actually
very
tell you what
expensive.
species?
It tells you what species.
So
is in
this
there.
is all
So
right.
that's the test.
I was overthinking the other one. I thought they were
Looks
professional
like an
and like
extra
They're,
sketch.
You could
they're like
actually-
the quick and dirty way to do it.
you could actually tell which species. This one you can actually tell
Yeah.
the species are represented
at
by
least,
each set.
At least with Pathogen DX, I don't know what the other PCR platforms tell you.
It looks like Trevor's stoplight board trying to spell
No,
his
I don't
name.
know. I'm just saying, as a whole,
like an etch a sketch.
as a whole, the industry, as a whole, you're looking at this as an industry, and they're testing. And if they list, these are the species it could be. I didn't know that, but
Yeah.
you would think it would be more like acute instead of like broad. Like the test is
Yeah.
like, hey, just fucking,
Right. Yeah.
just test something. Here you go. You pass or you fail. But you don't even know what it is on that other test.
Yeah.
So this is more
PCR
definitive.
is more specific.
Specific is the
Yeah.
word.
I know. The more I watch this, to realize really how dumb I really am.
No, and how skewed the system is.
No, I just thought it was professionals. That like
had
if
no
they do
idea.
testing and when the people writing the regulations, like it's a big thing and it affects almost $2 billion between rec and medical yearly in revenue. So there's a lot of people in your state are partaking in this. You think there would be a little bit more care and a little bit more specificality on things. So it's like the same test across
Right.
every lab, and they have the same results, and each cultivator's up against the same thing for competition wise, because it still is a free marketplace. And in that side of things, the better you do something, the more you can charge for it.
Yeah, but you
But-
know that people are gonna take advantage of the system as long as they can.
It
Of
just
course.
That's the way of corporate America.
Of course, but if you put that date on it, I guarantee you the quality
Oh, like a
improves.
born on date?
Well, yeah, I think you all should have a born on date. But if you put that date, I'm like, hey, this is the way the testing is going to go, pass or fail, I guarantee you, I mean, probably people are going to be remediating it a lot more if they don't put the freaking sanctions on that,
Or maybe the commission.
That's why
But
it's
I
not
think
that
the
simple.
quality will go up, and so won't as far as it's going to be healthier.
I think
Common
if you could
sense.
change a few things, like
I think if everybody
know?
followed the regulations, there'd be a lot of people that are not in business right now. So
A lot.
oh yeah,
The benefits of PCR, it's more specific, as we talked about. It's
Yeah.
more broad, so any number of species can be included in the test, whereas for a plate, you have to create a growth media that as many species can grow on, but you can't catch everything with that. We can see which species are present. It's safer for employees because they're not having to handle large amounts of live growing
less
cells.
exposure.
Less exposure. You get results faster. So instead of having to wait 3 days for results, you can get results from 8.5 hours to 24 hours, depending on the platform that you're using. And the accuracy range is calibrated for the state limits. So when we're making a pass-fail determination, we can be really confident at that level that it really did pass or fail. But there's a lot of downsides to PCR too. It's amplifying all DNA, whether it's dead or live. And so there can be false positive rates. We try to separate between dead and live cells, but it's not complete. It's not 100%. So the numbers could be higher. It depends on the system that you're using, but it's probably almost never exactly 100%. There are known interferences between specific species that can skew results. So we know if this particular species is present, it might inflate the number more than that exact number. So there is some difficulty with species interference. It's much more expensive, both in equipment and consumables. You need more staff who are hands-on all the time doing this. It takes up a lot more facility space. It requires very highly trained molecular biologists. They're working on it all the time. They have to really know what they're doing to troubleshoot. It's a much more difficult system to use. There aren't any commercial blind proficiency tests available right now so that we can do a blind test to test our accuracy. And then it only has a reportable range. This is specific to Pathogen DX, but we can only report between 100 and 100,000 CFU per gram. So the state limits are anywhere from 100 to 100,000. So like we would catch the state limit, but we can't put, so on our COA, it will say over 100,000 if it's over that limit. So, because we don't know what the number is. So we just say over 100,000.
But it will still come up as a fail.
It fails. But we can't, so it doesn't matter scientifically. It doesn't matter in practice.
It's already 10 times over.
Yeah.
So what's the difference?
There's no difference except we can't put into metric a symbol over, we can't put greater than into metric. So we have to pick a number. So at SafeTiva, we pick 110,000 just to say, it was something over that limit. Yep. But other labs who are using different systems like plating, they can dilute infinitely and have numbers that are 500,000 or 1 million, right? We see these really high numbers. And so when you look at the public data, it looks like PCR labs have lower numbers, but it's just because of the way we have to put it in.
Okay.
Right. So it's a little more confusing for people. So this is my short list of solutions for how we fix it. We all have to understand better what the problem is, standardize across labs. I would get rid of these, they're called enumeration tests where we're giving counts. We should just say these species cannot be present in any number. I would much prefer that. And have it be species specific, make the data public, name the labs and the brands that use them, enforce specific sampling protocols. So the protocols exist out there for how cultivators should be picking these samples, but they're not enforced, and have better audits through the investigations team at the CCC who are asking meaningful questions. And then I put my contact information here at the bottom in case anyone wants to get in touch with me and continue the conversation.
Megan Dobro, mdobro@safetiva.com.
Wow, that's
Megan Dobro, PhD.
a little smoky in
Doctor.
here.
Is this Dr. Dobro?
Oh, I'd weigh that out if I had a PhD.
Because people would confuse me for a
You
medical
definitely
doctor.
would, Rick.
Oh, without a doubt.
I don't want to give anyone CPR.
That's how we
wouldn't
know you wouldn't.
You wouldn't be able to have a conversation with me or a snotting doctor. Yeah, I would. You earned that.
Well, that was a lot of
That's earned.
That was a lot of information.
So they think they're gonna come out with the data. You think they're gonna come out with the data publicly soon, like brands, names?
I think they're going to name the labs, and then it's up to everybody to show you've mentioned several times on your show that consumers have the right to ask for the COA at the dispensary. So they should go in and they should make sure what lab is on there before they buy the product.
So consumers should ask for the COA, take a picture of it with your phone, and wait for the list to come out of the bad labs.
Yeah.
And then they can correlate with the brands that
It's
are
about
cheating,
educating them to ask the question.
Right.
cheating you out of your dollar.
That's going to be a long list, let me tell you.
I wonder if there's going to be any protests in the street, some unjust.
No, they'll just
Customers.
lower the stuff
Probably
to
get a
half to
bunch of
dump
people-
it off, and corporate America will get a bunch of money, and then everybody will forget about everything.
Even coming on and talking on the show, you're probably at risk, putting yourself at risk of losing
The risk
customers.
is that I'm making it very well known that we don't cheat, that the numbers are what they are, and you might fail for some of the safety tests. And that means that naturally cultivators who find that risky, they're never going to come to SafeTiva. So that's the risk, is the more I talk about it, the more I'm alienating the clients who are looking for specific
Questionable.
results.
But that's okay too, because you don't want them.
Ethics here.
I don't want them, and I think
you do, but you don't.
I think there's enough market out there of good growers who care about quality products and they're really proud of what they made and they're not trying to hide anything. And those are the clients I want to work with.
Exactly. You want to know your scores.
Yeah.
You want to know your scores. Where to improve.
Yeah.
You're pushing away the people you aren't going to do business with anyway, probably. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, but you know what? It's like changing the regulations. That's the key. How long? I mean, because if the guys that are in charge of it don't know what they're doing and they're not listening to people that have the proper information, how are they going to make a legitimate judgment and change the rules or whatever?
I think when somebody gets really, really sick and that lawsuit's very substantial, you're going to see a lot of changes
Yeah.
in regulation.
What would you do to improve the standardization of lab testing?
I would make it species specific. First of all, tell us what species need to be included. Tell us how to handle the product, how we do the counting. If we're doing plating, how long in the incubator, at what temperature does it need to be done, right? It needs to be very specific. I'm in favor of them telling us what technology we should use just for the sake of standardization. I may not agree with what they choose, but I'll play along and I'll do it for the sake of standardization if it doesn't happen to be one of the technologies that we use at SafeTiva. But they need to give us at least a year to adapt, because when you take on a new technology in your lab, you have to validate it, you have to train people, and you have to get ISO accredited, and it's a yearly audit cycle.
And I'm sure the cost
So is
costs
there-
a few dollars.
Is there some technology out there that's outdated and giving false readings?
I think any of them have the potential to give false readings. You just have to know what you're working with. And in our lab, we do both the PCR and the plating so that we can see, here's the spectrum, so we know really what we're working with. For every single sample, we do both and be able to look at both. The nice thing is anyone can do it. So you guys could buy a pack of total yeast and mold Petri films. I think there's something like $2 each. And you just add 10 mils of PBS buffer, which is very cheap. It's like $15 for a liter bottle.
PBS buffer?
I'll give you the instructions.
Yeah, they're lost. There's no way they're doing that.
Add the buds in there, you mix it up, and you put a mil of that on the film, close it up, and the yeast and mold grows at room temperature.
It's almost like sea monkeys. Watch them grow and show your friends. Yeah, I like it. I like that.
Yeah, so you
Sea
guys could do
monkeys.
it.
Awesome.
Right. Yeah.
Wow, a lot of information.
So it's not
there.
blind.
Yeah. Did I totally bombard you with too much data?
Yeah. Have you seen the Tom Brady interview when Gronk's like, me not know that real money? Well, I not know this real statistics.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's
It's
funny.
all fake.
Yeah,
You've seen that, right?
The Bitcoin, the
You
roast
see-
of
yeah,
Tom
you
Brady.
see
Yeah, that was actually great.
It's hysterical.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Even
Me
you know that, not real money.
That was kind of brutal, but it was very funny.
Hilarious.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah,
think
we definitely learned a lot of things today that I didn't even know, and what a great interview. Very smart.
Thank you.
Oh, I mean,
She's a PhD.
SafeTiva Labs, they're located in Westfield, Mass, right?
Yep.
What's your address?
Yep. 109 Appermont Way. We take walk-ins, so anyone can come in between 9 to 4 in our lobby and drop off samples.
And if they're a new brand coming on, intake
reach
process,
out.
how do they come online?
info@safetiva.com. Reach out to us anytime.
sounds like these people know their business.
Yeah.
Oh,
Perfect.
really?
Thanks for being a leader in
better-
the lab testing industry here.
Thanks for
In
doing
Mass.
what you guys do. It's really important.
Yeah. I don't know. That's a wrap. That's a wrap.
Thanks,
You
guys.
felt good?
That's awesome.
Yeah. All
Just
right.
got to get a picture and.
Great.
Wake up in the morning, got a bag on my schedule. Niggas talking, bitches talking, niggas not on my level. Check the time, wrist, rollie, rose gold on the bezel. Grab my keys and get my cell and hit the door with a shovel. It's time to get it out the mud, 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 out the mud. It's time to get it.